everyone, welcome back to Life Unpotted. This is Sophie here, reporting live from Austin, Texas. Business as usual, ready to podcast, ready to chat. And it's interesting because I am right now trying to ground myself into the moment. I was definitely processing a lot of stuff before I sat down, just had therapy. And what I'm realizing is that just because I'm processing something doesn't mean that I have to talk about it. Doesn't mean that it has to become the main focus in my experience at this moment. Because a lot of the times, the thoughts and emotions that we're processing can happen behind the scenes. We can say, okay, I let go. I'm going to let this thought, I'm going to let this emotion figure itself out, because our minds have the beautiful ability to process. And a lot of the times, processing is something that we don't need to interfere with. So before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to take a note of reminding the listener, wherever you are, take a minute to just take a breath. Like, I'm just going to take a breath right now. Ground yourself in the moment, become aware of your environment, become aware of your surroundings, and remember that this space for you right now is a time to let go. It's a time to not have to worry about anything, to not think about anything, to just enjoy the conversation, enjoy us talking and working through stuff as usual, without pressure, without anywhere that you need to go, without anything that you need to do, because that's where I'm trying to be. And I hope that you, the listeners, are able to feel grounded in that as well. So thank you for being here. This community always brings me back, means so much to me. I'm really excited for our community Zoom tonight. So excited to talk to everyone. It always is just so helpful because I feel seen. I really do. And I couldn't ask for anything else from this beautiful community that we're building. So getting into today's conversation, today we want to talk about being perceived. How we spend, at least I've spent a lot of my life doing a lot of things to be perceived in a certain way. So maybe that was me wearing certain clothes. You know, I have flashbacks to being in high school and deciding that I need to start straightening my hair and I need to start wearing all the clothes that all the other girls were wearing in high school or all the other popular girls were wearing. And then going to college and law school and always looking around me to kind of figure out, what should I be doing? How should I look? How should I present myself in such a way so that I'm validated by the world? And as we're on this journey of really recognizing that we have this deep inherent value within, that we're whole and complete, it's also made me confront question of, why have I changed myself so much throughout my life? Why was I trying so hard to be like everyone else? And this is a question we've talked about, but the layers keep on deepening. Like, I keep on understanding, wow, when I was young, I was this skateboarder and I was chilling and being myself. And then flash forward to me at 25, I was just like everybody else. Like, what happened? What was the fear there? Why are we so scared of being different? Why are we so scared of being ourselves? And what are we trying to achieve when we are caught up in changing ourselves? What happens there? So those are initial thoughts. That's where I'm at right now with this topic, and I'm excited for it to unravel and to hear Daisy's thoughts.
I think this is an excellent topic. I think right now we're recognizing how we can just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into these same questions that we often pose for ourselves. And this fear of being perceived, just the first thing that comes to mind. I went to this yoga class last night at Flow Yoga in Austin. And before we got started, the yoga teacher said, okay, everyone's going to introduce themselves. And I felt this energy shift from everyone in the room. I felt everyone tense up. They were a little bit startled. Like, I felt like no one really wanted to be seen or perceived. And she looked at me and said, you go first. And she was just kind of like straight to the point. Like, she was the kind of person who, when she looked at you, she looked at you. So I was like, okay, hi, I'm Daisy. I'm doing good. Da-da-da. And then I felt like everyone looked back at me and everyone was thinking, oh, I have to do that. And everyone was terrified. And I felt that. I felt fine. I was like, okay, whatever. I'm not in a funk right now. I'm not afraid to be perceived. But it felt as though people were so uncomfortable. They would say, hi, my name's so-and-so, and they'd move on. And she was like, I would love to hear what your name is and how you're doing. And people were so afraid they wouldn't even say how they're doing. Or people would say, great, and like would look around. Everyone felt really uncomfortable. Whereas I wonder if you ask someone the same question in their own home where no one was there, I can only imagine that they would express themselves in their own unique way. So in this instance, it was interesting to see people actively be afraid to be perceived. And back to the question, why wouldn't someone just shout up loosely and say their name and be honest about how they're feeling? I'm sure there's many layers between that and fear of being perceived, but those are all layers of the mind. So I can only imagine if we were to ask this question in that class, why are you afraid to be perceived right now? I can only imagine that in itself would break the ice and break the tension. So does it even matter what all of those layers between why you're afraid to be perceived and being perceived unafraid to do so? None of those layers matter. We could go and we could get lost in them, but I feel as though we could also just exit the mind and that would solve our problem. Because I think of asking someone, why are you afraid to be perceived? And also showing up vulnerably and saying, well, this is why I'm afraid to be perceived. Is that going to get them out of their mind and into the moment? Is that the entire reason why we're afraid to be perceived? Because we are never actually living in the moment, but always just in our mind?
A few things are coming to my mind. I think first of them, I remember being in those situations before where I was so scared. I would look around, and it's interesting. Yoga has been a very interesting one, and going to this new studio where people there, at least in the classes I've been, really seem to be just really there to do the yoga. Like, they're not there to look a certain way. They're not there to show off their Lululemon. Like, they're just there to do the poses. And I found myself in the class the other day being nervous about how I looked, or that like my shirt was kind of like falling off my sleeve, and just kind of like being really fixated on myself. So much so that it was hard for me to just let go and do the flow until I started to remember, oh wait, no one here is thinking about me. Like, no one here is focused on me as much as I'm focused on myself. And I think that example that you give really highlights something I've been thinking a lot about. Like, I was walking on the street the other day and I walked by someone who lives in our building. And I was in a funk that day. Funk meaning I was just really caught up in my head. It's funny, we realize like when you're in a funk, are you just in your thoughts? And we both paused to chat. And so it's funny, like the first 2 minutes of the conversation was like, hey, oh yeah, how are you doing? Like, and you would feel both of our bodies like kind of like wanting to walk the other way because of the, you know, the societal standard of when you run into someone, you're going to say hi and then walk away because you don't want to keep them longer than they want to be there. So I noticed myself being like, oh, I felt that impulse to want to walk away, but I noticed myself actually being engaged in what she was saying. So I was like, wait, why would I leave right now? We're actually having a good conversation. So we ended up talking for like 15 minutes. We exchanged numbers. She told me about this like event in Austin that her boyfriend was throwing. Really awesome conversation. She seems really awesome. And what I was thinking about after that is we both wanted that conversation. Like, we both wanted to chat, but someone has to be the one who decides that they're going to not really initiate it in this conversation. But the point I'm trying to get across is that I feel like in life, we're always just looking to other people. We're looking to each other to give us the green light that it's okay to stand there on the street and actually look interested in engaging with this girl, to show that I am interested. It was making me think, like, why would I be so scared to show that I was interested in having the conversation? And maybe this comes from living in New York City where people are fast paced and going. And I see a big difference in Austin recently. Sometimes I'll be walking on the street and I'll notice I'm like just looking at someone and they smile at me. And this is a really new thing for me moving to Austin. And a big thing I'm seeing in Austin is that a lot of people are more open. But that's not really the point I'm trying to draw. It's really the point of going back to the yoga scenario and tying that into what I'm saying about running into this girl and kind of If we're always hiding because we're looking for other people to reveal themselves first, the reality of it is those people are also looking to you. So we end up having like a bunch of humans, let's say a group of people, everyone is scared. Everybody's insecure. Everybody is just a human who is scared. So there's this beautiful power that comes in when we do express ourselves and we give someone else the permission to say, oh, I'm going to say how I am feeling. I'm going to say, hey, yeah, I'm actually not feeling too great right now. And it would be great if we could, like, you know, when the yoga teacher asks, is there anyone feel like there's a place in their body they want to work on? I felt nervous to raise my hand in the past. So it's just really interesting because it's like you see this weird thing happening of we think we're thinking about ourselves, but in reality, everyone else in their room is also thinking about themselves, not just in their room, but in life. We're all thinking about ourselves. And this can get in the way of forming real relationships with people or really forming close friendships because we're too scared to be perceived as the one who's interested. We're too scared to be perceived as the one who's, oh, hey, I would love to get coffee with you. Because we're scared of rejection. We're scared of maybe that person not feeling that same way. And this is just my experience. So I'm curious if other people feel that way. And yeah, I just think that there's a lot of power when we can free ourselves from the fear of being perceived because we realize that that was just a fear. And all that was something, it was like a safety bubble to keep us safe. But we actually don't need to be safe in these environments because if we open ourselves up, and again, it's not like I'm going to sit there and start crying, but it's something as simple of, hey, yeah, I'm Sophie and I moved here recently. Like just conversing and being open.
So something I've been thinking about recently is that live, the word live, is a verb. And often when we don't take action, when we're not actually living, we are in our minds, we are in our head. And the longer we go hiding in inaction, just in our minds, the stronger conviction we have within the thoughts that are in our mind, and we start to believe them. And this goes in line with what you were saying, this fear of being perceived, this fear of not hiding, of showing ourselves. It's like the longer we just go without taking action, the longer we go hiding, the more scary it gets to take that action and say, hey, yeah, you know, my name's so-and-so and I'm actually feeling not great. If you said that in that yoga class I was in, I'm sure people would have loosened up a little bit. People would have related and people like, yeah, that's why I'm here, because I want to feel better. Or even if you asked people after the class to say their name, to say how they are feeling. Because if yoga is anything to me, it's learning to sit and breathe through and move with our thoughts, to sit with them. And what that does is that gets you out of the mind. So I imagine if you would have asked people after this class, they would have been way less likely to hide and more likely to take action and say, this is who I am. And I think that is because, in a way, in yoga, you are taking action because you are living in the moment, or you're trying to, because you're observing your thoughts and moving through your body. That's why you might not feel like you're doing much in a slow yoga class, because we are conditioned, or I am conditioned to think I can only have a positive outcome if I am pushing myself really hard. But with yoga, you're doing gentle movements, but you're doing the hardest work of all, which is sitting with your thoughts. And that is what allows you to move out of them and into reality. And reality is where we have fun. Reality is where we don't think about being perceived at all. We don't think of the need to hide. We just are, and we exist. And that's where life happens, is reality. And we spend so much of our life not in reality, but in our heads. And I say that as someone who has been in their head so much, but you can always come out of it by sitting with your thoughts. But that's what life is. And reality is so fun. It's so fun. There's so much to do here. So we can't miss it. We just got to arrive.
Well, it's like you come out of it by sitting in your thoughts, but you also come out of it by facing the discomfort. And this is social media is like the number one example for me for this, because the fear of being perceived that I have had from posting on social media, like from the first time I ever posted on Instagram, it was crippling anxiety to pick up the phone, to record myself, and not just record myself, but to say the things that I'm passionate about, to say the things that I care about. And this is like an interesting topic of like within the subsection of being perceived, like taking it on to like passions, right? The fear of expressing to people online that I'm really passionate about this. Like there's been so many times in which I have gone to express myself on Instagram, being really excited about something. And after that, I'm like, oh, did I look weird? Was that weird? Was that too much? Are people going to think I'm like weird? Like this disproportionate response that had really clouded my judgment to be able to see that the videos I was making, the content that I was making, in my mind, it was as if I just posted a pic. Like, I don't even know what I'm equating it to, but something that was just atrocious. But I'm just posting a video of me talking or set a picture of me of the trees or something. But all it came down to, it wasn't the content, but it was the act of expressing. It was the act of showing myself. So I think what happens is we get confused when we have spent most of our life hiding, when we spent most of our life not really doing anything uncomfortable. And it's crazy. I was writing yesterday and I was like, holy shit. I thought, looking back at when I was a lawyer, like this life I was living, I thought I was super confident. I thought I was really confident and outgoing, which is really, 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 really interesting now because I'm like, wait a minute, why has this journey been so hard? And I looked up the definition of illusion yesterday, and it was something like a distorted perspective of what's actually happening. And it's almost like we don't become aware of the illusion we've been living in until we actually start doing stuff that's really, really uncomfortable. And for me, that was posting on social media and then having to face, wait a minute, if this is the same person who I have felt confident my whole life and outgoing, then why is now expressing myself so hard? Why is this so hard? And I think that revealed that my confidence, I've said this before, my confidence that I was exuding was just me fitting into the role of placing myself in the box of being perceived the way that I thought I should. So of course, I'm going to be confident when I'm dressing like everybody else and I'm doing all the things that I think, because it's like a weight of relief, right? Like I look like them, I fit into the group. But that wears off. Like I think that wears off the whole I'm going to just try to fit in and be like everybody else, because you reach a point where you realize that was like that mask that I was wearing, like this facade that was layers and layers and layers on top. And there's layers and layers and layers beneath. There's like a huge gap between how I was putting myself onto society, how I was presenting myself, and who I really am. And I think social media brought to light that gap because it showed me how difficult it was to express myself, which revealed these things act as a vehicle to reveal to us. They're a mirror of, wow, I judge myself more than I ever knew. I am so insecure. And this is coming from the same person who thought I was so confident. Like our friend Andrew has been talking about recently. That confidence, which is I built that on top of a bunch of insecurities that I hadn't faced. So just to go back to what I'm saying, is just like, yeah, you see then, now I've posted on social media and it's like, it's gotten easier. It's getting much easier for me to pick up the camera, and all of a sudden, I'm just talking to the phone as if I'm talking to my sister on FaceTime. But that would have been really, really, really hard for me to do a year ago, even a few months ago, which shows, I think the only way to get comfortable with being perceived is to plunge into the unknown, like they say on TikTok, climb cringe mountain of expressing yourself and not caring what people are going to think about you, not being scared to be seen trying, not being scared to be seen being like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway. Because then you reach this beautiful point where you're like, wow, I showed up time after time and time after time again of expressing myself. And I face my own fears of being perceived. We can let go of the fear of being perceived by facing ourselves.
Wow. So first off, I was thinking something, but my entire perspective just changed with that last line. Because when we are posting on social media, we are posting to others who are going to perceive us. But before even thinking about that, we're perceiving in our own minds ourselves. And of course, that's going to influence how we think others are going to perceive us. Because of course, if I'm sitting here vulnerably reading poetry and I'm thinking, God, that's vulnerable. That's a little weird. That's a little bit scary to put that out there. Of course, I'm going to think that others are going to think the same thing of me because I'm in the brain, I'm in the mind, I'm in the mind. But you can't be perceived by reality. Reality doesn't have a mind. So there's no way you can be perceived by reality. So if you are living in reality as opposed to living in your mind, then there's nothing to be afraid of because nothing exists outside of your mind. So it's all about where are you? You as the person, you as the user of social media, you as the user of Instagram, as the user of TikTok, where are you? Are you in your mind as you record yourself and post a video? Or are you in flow, which is reality? Are you doing this because it's a pure, authentic, unique expression, like a journal entry? Is this for you nothing more than a journal entry? And I bring up journal entry because that is so powerful because you're not thinking about how someone else is going to perceive that. So you're not thinking about that through the lens of how you perceive it because you're not thinking, you're just in reality expressing. You are just reality expressing itself and you are not thinking about it through your own perception. So that's what art is. It's tapping into a flow state where you are just expressing yourself and reality is expressing itself through you because you're not in the mind. The mind is the great ruiner of us being able to express ourselves. For next week's newsletter, I'm writing about my experience as I've always been someone who loves reading song lyrics. Like at a point, I feel like it was a personality trait. I was just obsessed with it. And as someone who is so great at hiding behind people, behind things, I've questioned, what is this obsession? What is there beneath this? And for me, it's that I've always wanted to express and write. But after going through education, thinking that, oh, my grammar's bad, I hate thesis papers, I hate persuasive arguments, these things that are means to an end, that aren't teaching you self-expression, I walked around thinking that I'm a piss writer. I'm a shit writer. I'm so bad. But that's just my thought. That's just my mind telling me that. And the only way for me to break that is to enter reality. And the way to enter reality is through action. Because action is where you tap into flow. It's where you tap into reality. And it's not you who's doing it anymore. It's the greater collective consciousness that is allowing you to express these beautiful things through you. That's all creativity is. And I can't help but think of Rick Rubin because he's said a lot of great things on this. And one of them was, no one is necessarily unique to creating an idea or a creative expression. Everyone is simply just a vessel for the universe, the consciousness, collective to express itself through you because you are allowing that. You have to be relaxed enough. That's why you have to write everything that you do as it were a journal entry. Think about it as if it was just an expression. There was no outcome. There was no way anyone else was going to see this. Because as soon as you start doing that, it becomes unoriginal. We're obsessed with getting validation. But as soon as we're able to let all of that go and not even think about being perceived, important word, think, because let go of thinking. Why do I feel so free for the first time in months? Because I wrote this morning and I pushed through all of the noise and I just experienced reality. And there's lingering effects of that. It trained me to get out of my mind and just have fun with reality. There's something to be said about that.
Wow, those are awesome thoughts. Really. I'm like, wow, like you're processing a lot with creativity, which is like really cool because I relate to that a lot. And yes, of course, like when you write, what you're doing is you're facing a massive fear that you had. And that's why a lot of times when I wake up and it's like I'm feeling shitty and all these things and I do something really uncomfortable, like make a social media video, I face myself. I face the fear. I think life is like this constant act of we're continuously facing fear. But what happens is that this huge gap forms between us and the fear. And all of a sudden, weeks go by that we're not facing it. And all we have to do is face something. I think there's like this beautiful power, and this is with creativity. Like, yeah, when you do something and you express yourself, you're letting go. You're letting go. You're out of your mind. And all of a sudden you're free. And I'm having like this realization that I've been having, I guess, cumulatively the past like few months, but it's really resonating right now of like, when I first started expressing myself creatively, I was trying to match what other people were doing, or I would make videos, like subconsciously I would talk like other creators. I was just looking out there and trying to figure out what template to use. What do I follow? What guide do I use? And then I slowly started to just kind of like trust myself and start realizing, wait, I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of things to share. So why am I looking to this person who I'm placing on some hierarchy and saying, okay, they have it, they know what they're doing, they know what they're doing, they know what they're doing, when in reality, those people, what you're seeing is just them expressing themselves, tapping into their innate creativity. And I think this is the problem with hierarchy and blue check marks on Instagram and thinking people are more valuable because, oh, like even someone like Rick Rubin, it's like, oh, he's up here, and not to undermine all the work he's done, and he's fantastic and he is so incredibly inspiring, but he will say himself, he's just tapped into flow. We can't give credit to this amazing universe that we exist in, that we're able to tap into, this ability to create, to anyone, but flow itself, but the state itself, but reality itself. And when we recognize that like so much of that fear we have about expressing ourselves is rooted in division and is rooted in thinking that other people are more capable and are better and have better ideas than we do and are smarter, until we realize that's just not true. So then what happens? You start expressing what you actually think. You start saying what you actually think. And all of a sudden people are resonating it with it like never before. And guess what? Not only are they resonating with this, but they're resonating it with a lot more than when you were picking up that phone and trying to be something. They're resonating a lot more than when you are trying to fit in with everybody else. Because when you're just trying to fit in with everybody else, like with this podcast, really over time, we've learned from like our friends at Dualistic Unity and other people who have done this. And over time now, we're just finding our own path. We're seeing Daisy and Sophie, we are different than everybody else in the sense that we all have our unique perspectives to tap into. And this is why it's so cool to hear from other people like in the community, because everyone phrases things differently. Everybody says things differently. And the point is that when you're expressing yourself on social media or in general or any sort of creative art form, and you let go of trying to create in a way that makes sense, and you let go and trying to create in a way that people will understand, you realize that when you create from here, people will understand that because that's just them. You're tapping into who they are, innate love, problems of existence, the difficulties, the pain points of this existence. You're expressing music. We all relate to truth. But when we're acting out of fear, that's why we don't really relate to those people as much. The power of being yourself without trying to be somebody else. Because there's nowhere else to be. You are just as capable as Rick Rubin, as all these people. All they have done is face discomfort and have moved forward.
On the topic of facing discomfort, Sophie and I, yesterday, we were having a meeting and we were talking about where are we going with Life Unpotted? What do we want to work on right now? And a big topic was our individual writings. So we're working on that. But I was just digressing and planning and talking through things. And one of the things I said was, I can create more time in the day. I'll get up extra early and I'll write. And Sophie looked at me and was like, no, just wake up when you normally do and write. And it was interesting because there's an discomfort to think that, I can't just wake up and start writing. So my mind wants to create a solution. I'll wake up early and then I'll be able to write. When in the reality, sure, you can do that, but you don't need to change anything about your day. And you probably shouldn't if you want to be consistent with writing, because you're just delaying facing yourself by creating and installing these different protocols. And by that, I mean, you should be able to, at any moment in the day, someone in the crowd just turns around and says, Daisy, write. And you should just be able to do it. There shouldn't be, I can only do it at 6 a.m. before the sun has risen on the couch with a lit candle and while drinking my coffee. You can do that. Absolutely. That sounds very nice. But you don't have to. You can write anywhere, at any time, at any place, because if you decide that you can't, then you're just delaying the inevitable of you have to face yourself in order to write. And that's never going to be comfortable. No matter how comfortable you make your external, no matter how comfortable you say, right, I'll go to a cafe, I'll get a coffee, I'll do this. No, don't do any of that. Just write. Because the beauty of writing is that you are in a state of humbling yourself through just tapping in and writing. And entering that state is the greatest gift of all.
Yeah, and I think also that's like any sort of creativity, any sort of expression.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's also like, think of the podcast episodes when we're thinking too much about what do we say, what do we say, what do we say? It's like we doubt that creativity, I saw the sign in Austin, creativity is intelligence having fun. We doubt that this beautiful being of ours that's made up of thousands of neurons and is functioning in incredible ways, we doubt that what we're going to say is going to make sense. And I think a lot of that's rooted in school and growing up, but we lose sight of this magnificent intelligence that we all are.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and we have certainly had several podcast episodes where we're in the mind. That's not to say they're not valuable or helpful, but I know from a feeling, because I'm in flow state right now. I'm not thinking. I'm enjoying. I'm having fun. You're having fun. We're not getting caught up, because there are episodes sometimes where you look the wrong way and I look the wrong way. And it triggers the other one and we're angry about it and we think about it and we talk about it. And it's it's inevitable. It happens sometimes. But it's funny because we're just so in the mind and the pain feels great. And sometimes you got to feel it. There's no escaping it, but you can move on. I wonder if when you are so stuck in the pain, if you just grow it. I just realized we've been talking about the fear of being perceived. I'm not going to go down that route. I'm feeling grateful because it is crystal clear for me right now. Probably because I wrote this morning, which helped organize my thoughts.
You wrote this morning, but you also let go this morning. Like, do you see that, Daisy? Do you see the connection?
Right. I let go, and that happened to be through writing. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It's never the act. It's just letting go. I could have skydove this morning, skydived. That could have what allowed me to let go. It can be anything. But writing happened to be one that was readily available to me and to everyone, is to just write. I remember making journal entries when I was like 8 years old. And not having fun with it because I wanted to be the girl in the Disney Channel movie who was sitting there writing out her life story. And I would just write things to write them instead of like connecting. I'd be thinking about what I was writing because I wanted to romanticize and be like explaining to this person exactly everything that I did. Like very content focused of I'm doing this morning, I did this afternoon, and I'm doing this evening, and this is exactly what happened. And I never just tapped into flow through the journal entries when I was 8 years old with my locket on the front in butterfly engraved in the denim fabric wrapping around the journal.
That's like so Disney Channel, like circa 2002. And it's interesting because I have experienced that too. It's like I'm playing basketball as a kid, but I'm looking to see if my parents are watching me. Like you're doing something for validation. You're doing something to feel better about what you're doing. And it's taken me a really long time now to I can get to the point where I can write and actually write without thinking about I have to go post it tomorrow. I have to go share it. Like I used to have such impulsivity with I have to make a video, I have to share it right away because everything I was making was for the purpose of getting validation, which is important to remember. Write just to write, paint just to paint, create just to create. When we're always creating to get validation, then we're not really doing it for the act of creation. And it doesn't mean we can't share stuff, but I think it means like coming back to your innate sense of creation for you, for the act of doing it. And that's where all of a sudden you do share that. And you weren't doing it worrying about being perceived. You were doing it and just tapping in.
Just going back to my denim wrapped butterfly journal, I was doing everything that I was doing as if I was being perceived. I was perceiving myself. So I was lost in perceiving myself a certain way that I couldn't just enjoy it. I wanted whoever was going to read my journal to perceive me as the girl from Disney Channel in her room. So even as a small kid, especially as a small kid, all you're doing is thinking about yourself. And Sophie has got to say something.
You just said like exactly like circling back this whole conversation, like bingo, you were perceiving yourself. Like, why are we so scared of being perceived? Why is the person in the yoga class scared of raising their hand and saying how they're sit, what they're feeling? Why am I scared of posting on social media? We look and say because that person might think this, that person might think that, but it's us. Like we are judging ourselves. We are constantly being scared of perceiving ourselves in a certain way. It is our own judgment. And that's the really interesting thing about getting comfortable in your own being, getting comfortable dancing in the living room when you're alone with yourself or putting on that music or expressing yourself online. It's not that we're scared of other people. We're scared of ourselves. So when we are able to get comfortable with who we are, what shifts? You're posting videos. Nothing externally has changed. You didn't find out what anyone thinks. You didn't find out anything. So what shifted? This is huge, right? Like this is so important to highlight. To anybody who's like looking out there of like, I need other people to change so I can be myself. I need to be in the perfect environment. I need to be around certain people. No. I now am in a place with most people that I meet on days where I'm not caught up in my head, which a lot of time is recently, it's really not that much. Generally, like overarching my life right now, I'm much more comfortable showing up as me. I'm much more comfortable introducing Daisy as my girlfriend without even thinking anything about it. I'm much more comfortable telling people about the podcast, about leaving my job, about posting my thoughts online. And all of a sudden, that big wave of discomfort, of fear, has slowly subsided because I faced myself. We are only ever facing ourselves because there are no other people. There's just our mind. There are no other people that you're facing. There's nobody else. You have no idea what anyone thinks about you. And you never will know. So how do you free yourself to enjoy life? You free yourself from you. You free yourself from your own fear of being perceived by facing yourself and doing the thing. So I think it's a great way to tie up this conversation of just like, wow, we're so scared of being perceived because we're so convinced that people are going to judge us. We're so convinced that people are going to have certain ideas about us, about what we're creating, about what we're saying, about us saying the wrong thing. But nobody knows any more than you do. So when you get up in that room and you express yourself, everyone there is on the same playing field. It's a whole expression of like, you are always setting the tone. If you show up and you're so confident in what you're saying, other people will perceive that. So it's not about what you're saying. It's about how much are you embodying what you're saying and believing in what you're saying. And you create your own reality. You create what is true in your reality. You create conviction for yourself. So if you want to feel comfortable in being yourself, you have to be comfortable with yourself first. And then all of a sudden, when you go and express I say all of a sudden a lot. When you go and express yourself to somebody else, no one else, you're not experiencing any other discomfort because you're comfortable. And if anybody else is uncomfortable, that is just their own stuff. That is just their own fear of them. So I think this is probably a conversation we could go even deeper in, but probably we'll have to do a part 2 on this one. I'm curious if anyone has specific comments or questions about scenarios, being perceived in certain scenarios. But all in all, like, I'm here to say that throughout reflecting on the past few years, where I am now is holy shit, I am so much more comfortable in myself. So it just goes to show that when we take action and we keep moving forward, there is somewhere we get, meaning we kind of unravel and we go inward. We just get more and more comfortable in reality, outside of our mind, outside of our thoughts. And that's a beautiful place to be because we're more connected to our being.
Absolutely. This is such a good conversation. And I hope every single one of you gets to experience reality today. Have fun with reality. Let go of the perception of your mind that you have of yourself. Whether that's looking up at the sky and seeing the birds or seeing the planes, seeing the clouds, or doing something you normally wouldn't. That can help you get back into reality and have fun with it where you're not thinking about yourself. I just hope that every single one of you who's listening to this gets to have fun with reality today. And if you do, feel free to message us. We'd love to hear from you because I know how fun it is just to be in reality. So I just wish that for all of you. And maybe we'll even ask our members in our community Zoom tonight for scenarios that have to do with being perceived. So maybe that's what we'll do for our Thursday episode. We'll do a part 2 of this and go into a specific example and go in a little bit more deep. That could be fun. So we'll see if we can do that. And yeah, this is a good combo. Appreciate all of you being here, and we will see you on Thursday.
Appreciate all you guys. This was an awesome conversation. Definitely helped ground me in reality. I feel relaxed. So thank you to the listeners. Thank you to Daisy, my co-host, and thank you to this beautiful earth that we're a part of. Hope everyone does have the chance to let go today and just embrace reality wherever you are without pressure to be anywhere but where you are. So talk to you all soon and have a good week.